We've spent the last few weeks diving very deeply into battleground states to figure out how the race has been playing out on the ground in the states we think will matter. We've also been identifying counties that matter most on election day or in this whole early voting season. But in this episode, which is our penultimate episode before election day, we bring all of that together and talk about each candidate's path to an electoral college win. You know, polling is one thing, but the path to 270 is another. And America saw that dynamic play out in 2016, as I'm sure everybody remembers. So we'll spend the next 20 minutes walking the path that each campaign sees to an electoral college win. And this is the view from political professionals inside each party. So let's start. And Alex, I'm going to you first. Obviously, the polling, national and battleground, as well as internals, show multiple paths for Biden. What is the most obvious path?
I think the most obvious path is through the upper Midwest. It is rebuilding the blue wall that he lost, or I should say Democrats lost in 2016. And that means Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The polling there is better for him than in some of the other core battleground states. When you look at where Donald Trump has suffered the most since the pandemic, since his response to the George Floyd protest, it really is concentrated among a lot of white voters and white voters with a college degree in particular, but also extending, I think, into sort of a non-evangelical white working class base that we've talked about in some of the old episodes when Tim Alberta was on and we were talking about Michigan. We talked about those voters who are more moderate, who are more persuadable, and who are not all that happy with Donald Trump's job performance right now. And again, to the point I made at the top, this is reflected in the polls, particularly in places like Wisconsin and Michigan. It's a question how competitive those states even are at this point. I think there are still some questions about Pennsylvania, but look, you have recent polling even this week that shows Joe Biden with a 9-point lead in Pennsylvania. And so that's kind of the state of things. The races are much closer in places like Florida, which of course, and it's always going to be close to Florida no matter what, but also North Carolina, also Arizona. In fact, a poll out just today, this is something of an outlier, but actually shows Donald Trump with a 1-point edge in Arizona. Joe Biden is still leading in the overall averages, but his margins are smaller in some of these other Sunbelt states. And that's why I think that, according to the polling at least, that's Joe Biden's path of least resistance right now. And I would throw in the whole reason that places like Iowa and Ohio, where Donald Trump won huge in 2016, almost by double digits in both, that's why those states are also competitive. And it's not inconceivable that Joe Biden could win both of those on election day as well.
So Francesca, jump in here. What the Trump path looks narrow. If you're looking at the polling and lining that up against the electoral college votes of each of these battleground states, the path looks narrow. But what does the campaign see?
Okay. Well, I do think that there's a huge difference between what the campaign says it sees and what the actual path is at this point. They can talk all day long about how he's going to expand the map and that they have all these options, but the polling does not indicate that, Kristin. And it's not just polling. I mean, it's focus groups. There's a lot of other information. It's early voting totals that would suggest that his path is much more narrow than they originally anticipated that it would be. And take a look at their actions. They have completely pulled down advertising in Wisconsin all the way up until the election. The RNC still does have advertising there and it bumped it up. So perhaps that's why the Trump campaign feels that they do not need to have it there. But it doesn't change the fact that they've completely pulled it down. They are down this week in Ohio. That one could be more that they feel confident. They feel more confident in Ohio than they did before. But there's no way that pulling down the advertising in Wisconsin is a measure of confidence. What I have been told by Republicans and Democrats is of those upper Middle West bad battleground states is that Pennsylvania does look like it could go for Donald Trump the most. That's probably his best bet there. As Alex was noting, he's still behind there, but not as significantly as he's behind in Michigan and Wisconsin. But take it from Donald Trump himself as to what he sees his pathway to victory. On a call with his staff on Monday morning, which he did not seem to know that some reporters were on the line, he said that he was going to run up and down the coast with Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and he said South Carolina and seemed to be referring to Pennsylvania as well. And I think that polling does support that that's his best shot at this point.
It is hard for me to see Biden taking Florida. And if Trump takes Florida and North Carolina, the race is very much in play for him. Can you argue against that piece of it, Alex? If Trump takes North Carolina and takes Florida, it's hard to see Biden walking out of this with the win.
Oh no, I disagree with that. I mean, those two states alone represent a huge number of electoral votes, and so if Donald Trump is winning those states, yes, this is absolutely a very competitive race. But of the core 6 battlegrounds, I think it's generally seen that Florida and North Carolina are the least likely to swing toward Joe Biden this time around, because then he could still win Arizona, although it would be a very close race, I think, in that case. And again, I go back to the upper Midwest, where it just seems like there has been a little bit of a bifurcation among those core 6, where the states down south have remained close and competitive. And the states in the upper Midwest, Joe Biden is performing better. It holds comfortable leads. Again, to the point, to Francesca's point, what I mentioned earlier, I think there are real questions about how competitive Michigan and Wisconsin even are at this point. Now, I will say for Donald Trump, if he does pull out Florida, you have to say then a state like Georgia is very unlikely.